This week, we have 4 games, yeah? And 3 of them are Man City versus Arsenal, Arsenal versus Man City, and Arsenal versus Man City. Let's get into this. Welcome back to the Arsenal Humans podcast with me, Luce. Today, I'm feeling pretty mixed, actually. I think right now, all that is consuming my brain pretty much is Kira Walsh, and whether she's going to Chelsea or not. I mean, it's looking pretty likely. All the reports, whether that's BBC, Sky, She's a Baller was actually one of the first places that I saw it as well. So many accounts on Instagram and socials and everything in general is pretty much saying it's happening. So I'm feeling pretty frustrated about that. I'm going to be real. I feel like I'm in a ranty mood about that signing because we're just strengthening Chelsea, and I mean, good on them. They're actually using their money. We could be doing that. I don't know why Arsenal's not doing it. Anyways, don't want to start off this pod like that because I feel like we've had a decent week of football. So, okay, you know what? Instead of starting the episode all ranty, whatever, we're going to get into our warm-up poll. We're going to look back at this week's football, and then we're going to look to next week's football because we're so lucky as Arsenal fans that we have both the men and women's side doing well. We have both the men and women's side competing in multiple competitions, so it means that we have more than one game for each team each week. It does mean we've had 4 games of football to look back on this week, and we've also got another 4 games to look ahead to next week. So it's quite busy episode, but you know what? Let's get into it. Okay, let's get straight into the warm-up poll. All question. I feel like I actually probably need to change it to question because the amount of times I've asked questions instead of actually doing it as a 50-50 percent poll thing. I feel like it's kind of tricky to come up with polls because most of my questions are sort of more opinion-based ones, but I feel like having a question, it is the last day that I am filming this, and hopefully this will be uploaded this evening. It is the last day of the WSL transfer window, and there's been a lot of stuff going on. We've also got the men's transfer window that will close in 3 days, if my maths is correct. It's going to close on Monday, and the WSL one is closing today, which is Thursday. So I thought I'd ask one last question. Gooners, what's one last signing you want before the window closes? And a couple of you, you did say Kira Walsh, which, let's not humble ourselves anymore. We all want it to happen. I wanted it to happen. I was kind of convinced it would have happened back in September. I actually spoke kind of publicly, went on TV to sort of say that, I think Kira Walsh is going to sign for Arsenal. That didn't really age that well, did it? Now that she's going to a London club rival. She's back in the WSL. Obviously, formerly used to play for City. Now she's back in the WSL, but it's not being 100% confirmed, but everyone's pretty much saying that it is confirmed. So, a couple of you saying that, I agree. I would love to be able to have Kira Walsh at Arsenal. Sadly, it's not looking like a reality, guys. Chloe Kelly, you know what? Chloe Kelly has come out publicly and she's had quite a big impact, I think, because she's been so raw and honest. I feel like that's something you don't see from a lot of players nowadays, but I feel like it's been really good to hear what she's had to say. So she's basically said that she's open to move to any club, and I mean, Arsenal would be a club for her to move to. It's looking like it's going to be United. I know there were talks with even Brighton at some point, but I do think if she's going to make the move, it is kind of weird. I was chatting about this earlier with a few people, and it is kind of weird that she'd want to go from a City to United. It's sort of like a rival, just a little one. So I'm a bit confused if you look at it on paper, but when you see what she's saying, she's desperate to get that game time. I think with the Euros coming up, fair enough on her. I'd love her to come to Arsenal. I feel like she'd do well. I do feel like we have quite a few strong attackers, strong wingers, so I'm not sure if that's a position that maybe should get loads and loads of game time, but it's Chloe Kelly. She basically became the face of the Euros towards the end, especially in the final. So I feel like she definitely would get in that team. But I feel like United does look like a good option for her. I mean, obviously Manchester derby did just happen a week or 2 ago now, and United obviously did win that, came out on top. So obviously it's promising for them. She'd be with Ella Toone, who is fellow Lioness, so that's probably looking more likely to be her option. But Chloe Kelly to Arsenal, not a bad shout. Actually, now I'm looking, we've actually got a couple of people saying Chloe Kelly. I think obviously we can't forget that we have just signed a player. Pretty much it was announced today. we have just signed Jenna Nwaneri, who is an American player, and that's good because she is a got hair on me. She is I keep molting. I don't know what that. She is, anyways. She is a left back. She's a defender, and obviously we have Emily Fox, who is the right back, who is in her US national team. So it's nice that she's got some familiarity, some familiar faces. Hopefully that helps her settle in. And it's always just good to strengthen our defence. I mean, if Chelsea can do it with Germa, then why can't we do it? Oh, also that was actually officially announced in the London derby. I will get into that later on when we chat about the games, but that's good. Anyways, that we have signed a player. We've signed a lot of younger players who have gone out on loan to get their experience. So in a couple of seasons' time, they'll really show their impact, and that'll be really good. But for now, I feel like we could do a bit more. We could sign a few more. Focusing on the men's side as well, Ollie Watkins has been a player that's been mentioned a few times. I don't see Villa getting rid of him. I'm going to be so real. I know obviously he supports Arsenal, and it was rumoured ages back that he would. I feel like, yeah, he could slot into us. We are looking for an out-and-out striker, but I don't see Villa getting rid of him. I see they've got that sort of debate between Duran and Watkins, and I do see out of the two of them, Duran going and then them getting a substitute. It wouldn't be a substitute, but just wouldn't be a starting striker because you won't be able to make both of them happy. So someone to come into Villa who is happy to be on the bench. I see that happening. So I don't really see him coming to Arsenal, but that's been someone you've recommended a couple of times. I think for Arsenal, we're just looking for more an attacking player. Not even like someone to cover Saka. I think, also I'm going to touch on it in this episode, but we saw Nwaneri. I feel like we're doing pretty good down the right. Even with Saka missing, yes, we can always strengthen the team. Like, there's no question that we could do that. But I do just feel like, in terms of looking for a player, the position we need is an out-and-out striker, because we've got a lot of people that like to drop back and create the goals as well, but we don't have someone who just permanently will be there and comfy to do that. Havertz is great at what he's doing in certain games, not every game. He's not the most consistent, but in certain games he's great at what he's doing. And I feel like he's still just lacking that person just being maybe a bit in front of him. But who knows? I do feel like it's been a bit weird because there's not many signings that happen in January, but we've been putting so much pressure that there should be more signings, and everyone's almost like, right, Eddie's gone, what's going on? There's no signings. There are a few signings, but maybe they're not the signings that we want. So let me know down in the comments what signings you actually want to see, because we're running out of time now, and if they don't happen now, maybe they'll happen in the summer, and that is sort of what I think we've got to start looking towards, because we've only got 5 hours, well, when I'm filming this, we've got 4 or 5 hours left of the WSL transfer window, and then we've only got about 3 days left for the men's side. So, we've not got long. But yeah, let me know if there's any signings you want to see for the rest of this season. But talking about the rest of this season, let's actually focus on what is happening currently this season. And we've got 4 games to recap on, both in the league and in cup competitions. So let's get into that. Wolves 0, Arsenal 1. We're going to get straight into the game, and as much as we got the points, we're still in second, and we're only actually 6 points behind Liverpool right now, who are in first. We've also, widened the gap a little bit with Forest, who are in third, because Bournemouth masterclass on them, 5-0, crazy. So that's good to see, and I'm hoping as well that Bournemouth can do it again this weekend as they're going up against Liverpool. I'm really rooting for the Cherries in that one, because if they can do it, it means that we're going to get closer and closer, and the Premier League could be back on the cards. I don't want to say it with too much confidence, because you never know with football. Football is very unpredictable. But either way, we got the win. I did predict 2-0, so I wasn't too far off it, to be honest. But I don't think anyone from that game has actually been focusing on the score or how other players performed. Everyone's just been focusing on that red card, and that's kind of what I want to chat about a little bit. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I just want to chat on it a little bit, because every media outlet has been consumed by Miles Lewis-Skelly getting this red card, which has actually now been overturned. Let me break it down. So basically, he went to get the ball, ended up getting the player 100% a yellow card, because you could tell it was a bit of a lazy one. He just put his foot in, just clipped him, and then he got given a red. That is where the issues sort of started, because it was Michael Oliver, who, with Arsenal, sort of has a bit of a track record as a referee that goes against Arsenal, to be honest. So I think we sort of went into the game knowing that he's got that bias that you see, and it's not just like obviously opinion based, like as in statistically, if you look at who he gives cards to, who he sends off, things like that, you can tell that there's sort of some relation there. And yeah, overall, I just think it's just a bit frustrating that he got given this red, and the fact that VAR is in the Premier League. Don't get me wrong, I'm going to talk about a penalty that was given in the WSL this weekend as well against us, and that doesn't have VAR. So in a way, you can think, right, it's purely down to human error. But this wasn't just human error. He basically said his studs were up, they went into the player. It was intent, harmful, whatever, get him off the pitch. And then VAR went, yep, cool. And that's the issue I think I have with this, because even with VAR, it's making mistakes like that. Don't get me wrong, if this was in another game where it was a lot closer and this one red card meant a lot because having 10 men on the pitch really impacted the game, then I'd be even more angry. But now it's sort of been overturned. I'm like, I don't know how this is happening, how this even came about, and it's a bit embarrassing that it's like got overturned. But one thing I absolutely hate is the amount of hate that Mike Oliver has got. I think as referees, they get abused way too much. I mean, it kind of starts on the pitch, you know? The players have a go, the managers have a go at the ref, so then the pundits have a go at the refs, and then us at home, we're sat watching, not qualified in any of those areas at all, going, yeah, he's wrong. And it is like, obviously I'm sat here right now and I'm like, yeah, it was 100% a yellow. Maybe it wasn't the best decision, a bit of human error, but I think we've just got to be a bit more patient with it. But I just think, yeah, obviously it was human error, and yes, he made the wrong decision, but he does not deserve death threats. I think you can say, yes, he made the wrong decision. That's what I'm saying. He made the wrong decision of a red card. Should have been a yellow. And then it got overturned, so it's all good now. Obviously, at the time, it was a bit frustrating. But I don't know why there's death threats and things like that to his family. Like, I think that's horrible. That is just so unnecessary. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I had to say about that game. I'm just happy we did get the 3 points from that, because if we didn't, it would have been very, very, very bad. Whereas now we've still got a chance for the Premier League title, which is something like that I don't really think I was saying a couple months ago. I don't think I was really saying it much this season. So you never know. The second game of the weekend on the Sunday, this was also humbling, but not humbling in the way of just having a dodgy red card. We had a red card, we had a penalty against us, and we ended up taking no points home. And that was Chelsea 1, Arsenal 0 in the WSL. This was actually the biggest game. If you look back to my last episode, episode 12 of the Arsenal Humans podcast, I predicted all about this game, and I predicted it to be the toughest one of the week, because on paper it is literally the toughest game in the WSL. I mean, it's the most exciting game. I think there's many good factors about this game. I mean, I just want to list a couple. Germa signing, that is unreal for women's football. I obviously mentioned that she could have been signed. There was a lot of rumours in the last week that were happening. So in the last podcast, I was like, oh, is this happening? Is this not? Ended up happening in the most crazy way ever. I know I've never seen anything like it. I don't think anything has even ever happened like it. But they basically, the whole... Right, I'm gonna paint you a picture here, actually. Right, I'm sat at Stamford Bridge in the Chelsea end, but we forget that. Minor details, a bit humbling that. But anyways, it just shows that the amount of Arsenal fans that sold it out. We sat there, record-breaking attendance, 32,000 people there. The actual atmosphere that they created through the visuals on the screen, crazy. They literally had a few screens obviously around, because this is at Stamford Bridge we're talking about, setting the scene more. And they said like their starting 11, whatever. Then they suddenly go on this shot and we're like, who's that? What's going on? And it's basically like a build-up to Germa coming out on the pitch, and everyone's like, oh, crazy. Suddenly you look down and she's actually there coming out on the pitch. They've got a videographer, they've got someone doing social media content of a live TikTok of her walking out on the pitch, and I was like, oh my god. I mean, my eyesight, it was a bit shocking, so I was looking at it on the screen, but it was on the big screen. I was like, wow, I felt like a part of history. We were literally witnessing history. Everyone that was sat there, and everyone that's even looked at this post or watched it, wherever you watched it, you literally witnessed history. And it is crazy because, yeah, record-breaking signing. I think it was like $1.2 million, I want to say, which works out as like 890k like pounds. And yeah, that is pretty crazy. So that was great for the women's game. atmosphere at the game was really good. It was really good to be a part of that, and I think it was nice to see so many people there. I mean, it is a big game, but so many people there supporting either team or actually just being a neutral. There was a lot of neutrals as well in the stands. Obviously, we had that record-breaking attendance. But for me, this game, they're all the positives, and I wanted to touch upon them. But for me, this game was the biggest test for Slagers, and I feel like a lot of people have been really harsh on her. I know we lost. I know we didn't get any points from it. But why we lost was because we had a penalty against us. I've watched the replay. If you haven't, just type in Arsenal Chelsea women replay on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Just type it in, and you'll see slow mo clips. And it was basically Kim Little put her foot in. LJ was running into the box. Kim Little put her foot in. At the time, I was like, "Oh, she's taken LJ out." But then I watched the replay back, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, she's literally clipped the ball. She touched the ball a tiny bit, then she took LJ out. But because she made that contact with the ball, I'm like, it's surely not a penalty." And then LJ went down and dived, which is what any player would do. Like, don't get me wrong, it's such a big, hyped up game. You're going to do that. And also, can I just say, before this even happened, before LJ came on the pitch, because she came on maybe around the hour mark, maybe like 60, 70 minutes in, she came on. Chelsea dominated for the first 5-10 minutes. Then Arsenal dominated, in my opinion, had a lot of attacks, a lot of shots on target, till about maybe 50 minutes. LJ came on, changed the game completely. Chelsea were just dominating, and I was scared. And then obviously she went down in the box, and I was like, oh my god, like it was just too much. I couldn't handle it. And then she obviously ended up winning a penalty. Gura Wrighton scored it, and that was basically the game done. But it wasn't. It wasn't the game just done, because Katie McCabe got a little bit leery. Katie McCabe, or should we say Katie McCord, she got her nickname back because I'm not going to repeat it on this podcast because I kind of want to keep it a little bit more PG. But she basically shouted at the referee, kind of swore at the referee and all that. And yeah, got herself a red card sent off, which I think, going back to the original thing of this being Slager's biggest test in the WSL, the penalty and the red card isn't a reflection of Slager's. I think it's a reflection of the heightened emotion in the game, because it definitely is a big game. Like, I don't know how I'd cope. So like, honestly, I understand why maybe players lash out at certain points, but I think it was just stupid her chatting out like that. But I do get it is a very heightened game and things like that, but all of those factors that I've just mentioned don't reflect necessarily directly on the manager. I think she did a great job. It was a tough game, but to keep it 0-0 right up until, I think it was like the 84th minute, I want to say, right up until around the 80th minute, it is even more gutting when they got that goal, because the minute the penalty was awarded, I was with my friend Laura, shout out to Laura, and we were sat there and we just went, right, okay, it's done now. Even though there was 6 minutes extra time, we were like, oh my god, could this happen? But it was just, Chelsea just became very defensive, obviously, because they knew they got the 3 points and they just wanted to keep that. I think Sonia Bonpasta, I've mentioned her a lot on this podcast, more than I probably actually should be talking about a rivalry's manager and praising them, but her aura, you just saw her the minute the goal went in, you just saw her calm, like she was like, yeah, I did that. And I was like, okay, you did that, girl. And she did. And Chelsea are top of the WSL, trailing so far ahead, leading the way with that. And it does worry me a little bit. It does worry me. But I mean, it's not just the WSL we can focus on. With Arsenal, we're very lucky we're still in all the competitions, for the women's side. Anyways, can't say the same for the men. But for the women's, we are in all the competitions. And we did have the replay of the FA Cup game. I mean, it was meant to be like a good few weeks back, but it got rescheduled, and we ended up winning it 5-0 against Bristol, which is kind of crazy because Bristol used to be in the WSL, so it sort of shows the comparison and the difference basically between the top tier of English women's football and in the second tier. There is quite a big difference. I don't even want to chat about the commentary for that game because I was out, so I didn't actually get to watch it. I know, I'm sorry. But I watched highlights and I was listening to commentary and I was like, what is this? These are not the players' names. So let's not even talk about that because the mistakes are actually crazy. But focusing on the goals, there are a lot. There are a lot. And I think it's really good because I predicted this to be a 2-0 win because I thought she's not going to put out a really strong team. But I think especially when you've just lost against Chelsea and how defeated you must feel, for her to then bounce back and bring out a squad like this was honestly unreal. Okay, so the camera actually just cut out, so I'm not really sure what the last thing was I said, but either way, I'm just happy with the women's side that we're in a few competitions, so we've got things to fight for, and I'll be talking about that in the predictions as well. Moving on to the last game, which did happen last night, was Girona 1, Arsenal 2, and I predicted it to be 2-0 win, so not too far off. I'm going to firstly start with their goal because we went on the back foot. They did score. I'm actually really happy they did score because I don't know why Raya stuck his hand out outside the box, and obviously that would have been a red card because he would have handballed it intentionally outside of his own box. So either way, I'm just happy the goal went in. Like, it kind of baffled me. Me and my friend were chatting about it, and we were like, yeah, that literally made no sense. I understand in the moment, but like, you've got to see where you are on the pitch, and if you're outside, like, yeah. Anyways, so yeah, they went ahead, which was poor from us, but what made things slightly worse was that Sterling did end up missing a penalty as well during the game, and I'm gutted for him. I really felt like with Saka out, this could have been his moment to really shine, and I just feel like it's sort of now going to get a little bit overshadowed with that, which is annoying for him. But focusing on the positives, Jorginho got a pen, so it was good to see him stepping up, taking on that role. And Ethan Nwaneri, I think he's the player we've got to chat about for this game. He is showing that he deserves to be in that squad, and he's actually giving Saka a bit of competition. When Saka comes back, which I'm hoping is very soon, after his injury, I feel like it's good now that there's someone that either could play maybe alongside him or on the other side of the pitch, or someone that can rotate with him for maybe cup games, or in the 80th minute, 70th, 80th minute, if your legs are tired, someone else can go out. So it's nice that we've got that option in Ethan Nwaneri, especially someone who's so young. And I think also, talking about his age, being so young, he literally took it on himself, that goal. I mean, if you watch it, he literally ran at the player. He could have passed it out, but he kept running. And then suddenly his body was literally facing the wrong way, but he swiveled it somehow and managed to loop it back and find the left side of the goal. And I was like, how does that even work? But honestly, crazy talent from him. So it's so good to see that he's stepping up to that position, and it's putting us in a good role. I mean, we're through to the next stage of the Champions League. It's confusing format, so I'm not going to get too much into it. I feel like I did it more in the last episode. So if you want to check that out, go to episode 12 of the Arsenal Humans podcast. But for this, I just want to focus on that we're through, which is really good, and I'm excited to see who we play in the next stage. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm happy we're still in the Champions League. We've got a couple more cup competitions coming up this week. So before I waffle on about anything else that's happened in the past, let's focus on the future and let's focus on the predictions. This week, we have 4 games, and 3 of them are Man City versus Arsenal, Arsenal versus Man City, and Arsenal versus Man City. Let's get into this. Okay, so I feel like this happens quite a bit with the men's and women's game, that the same teams end up playing Arsenal at the same time, which is kind of weird. So we have Manchester City versus Arsenal in the WSL on Sunday at 12 p.m. I'm going to predict it to be a 2-1 Arsenal win. I mean, I need it to be an Arsenal win if we actually want to stay in the top part of it, because we're not only just fighting for our pride and everything and fighting to be in the top 2, but we're also fighting for Champions League spot right now, as much as we're still in the Champions League. So you never know what could happen with that. I'm staying very hopeful with it. We still need to actually make sure that United and City don't get near. So at least if we can beat City, there's a lot riding on that basically. But I don't think it's going to be an easy game, especially it's an away game. So I do think they will definitely score. I mean, they've got Miedema. We're going to have Miedema playing against all her former teammates. So if anything, that will probably fuel her more. So I'm going to stick with a 2-1 Arsenal win. We then have Arsenal versus Man City men in the Premier League on Sunday as well, but this time it's 4:40, so you could watch both games, which is quite nice that you get 2 back-to-backs. Going to be probably completely different games. I mean, the form of Man City men isn't as good as the form that Man City women have been in the nicest way to put it. So I'm going to predict a cheeky little 1-0 win. I do feel like Pep has got a lot to prove, especially coming back against us. I mean, you've seen Haaland, his strength, he's just undeniable. Even Mamouche, who is a new player for City, he's been very good, very promising. I did watch him in the Chelsea game, and I did think he was a little bit selfish at moments. If he passed maybe to Foden or a few of the other players in certain situations in that game, I do feel like maybe they could have scored more against Chelsea. So I'm hoping he carries on trying to be selfish if it means that we're not going to get them, if we're not going to concede. But I do feel like he's a very promising player, so I don't think it's going to be an easy game whatsoever. But it is a home game at the Emirates, so I'm hoping it's a win. I feel confident in us, and our form has been pretty good despite these red cards and things that are out of our control, basically. I feel like we're still getting the points, so I'm hoping we can do that. We also then have 2 midweek games. As always, it seems to be the trend the last few weeks. Honestly, I don't know how all these players do it. It's enough for me to chat about it. But we have Newcastle versus Arsenal in the second leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final. And on aggregate right now, Newcastle winning 2-0 because obviously when they came to Emirates, I'm predicting it to be a 3-1 Arsenal win because I need it to be a 3-1 Arsenal win. Actually, no, because then that's equal. I need it to be a 4-1 Arsenal win. Yeah, 4-1 Arsenal win or a 3-0 Arsenal win. So actually, let's predict 3-0 Arsenal win because we need to get through. I think we've got a lot to prove. It probably does depend how the City games goes, if I'm being honest. And maybe this is me being a bit more idealistic and me manifesting rather than me like thinking realistically. Realistically, it'll probably be like a 1-1 or something, so then Newcastle will still go through. But we've got a lot to prove and we're in good form. The final game of the week is Arsenal versus Man City in the semi-final. Is it semi-final? It is the semi-final. Oh my god, that's come around quick. Semi-final of the Sub-Cup, of the, I don't know why I said Sub-Cup, Subway Cup, which will be on at Thursday at 7 p.m. I'm going to predict a 2-0 win for Arsenal because it's going to be on home turf. We have a lot to prove, and this is the cup that we tend to do well in, and I really want it to be another Arsenal-Chelsea final, but we still need to win it. Third time lucky as well. We need to keep that streak up because the League Cup seems to be ours in recent years, so we need to keep that going, and I'm hoping Thursday we can prove why we should be in that final. Both of the midweek games do sort of depend on the momentum we're taking in from the weekend. But, I mean, saying that, if you look back at what we've just done, we've literally just lost to Chelsea at the weekend. This is the women's side. Lost to Chelsea at the weekend, and then we come back and win 5-0 midweek. So, I think we are good. I feel like Slegers has a positive impact with us. So, I'm hoping we can do it. But, yeah, it's kind of weird how it's worked out, actually, that we do have three games this week against City, and then one against Newcastle. So it's a bit strange how that's worked out. I don't know who plans the schedule, but you know what? I'm predicting it to be a tough week, but an exciting week, and there's a lot of football for us to watch on different days as well. So it should be good. It should be good. But anyways, that is my predictions. Right, that is the end of episode 13 of the Arsenal Humans podcast. I really hope you're enjoying it. If you are, please make sure whether you're listening on Spotify, you give me a follow and a 5-star review, whatever you want to do. 4 5-star, it's up to you. And if you're watching on YouTube, then make sure you like and subscribe. Comment down below anything you want me to talk about in the next episode as well. Also, if you go over to my Instagram, lucechats, I will be posting the weekly warm-up polls, warm-up questions, whatever you want to call it. So if you want to get involved in that, have your say, then make sure you check it out. I'll be doing that from like a Tuesday to a Thursday between those dates, so make sure you get on that. But I'm enjoying it. I feel like it's been a busy week of football, and we've got another busy week ahead. So yeah, make sure you stay tuned for next Thursday. I'll be here sat on this beanbag, and I hope to see you there too. See you then.